The belt cracked across my back like lightning, sending shockwaves through my body. I staggered but didn't fall. My father's face twisted with rage as he raised his arm again, the leather whistling through the air before connecting with my shoulder. Pain exploded through my nerves, but I bit my lip until I tasted blood, refusing to give him the satisfaction of my tears. "You've forgotten your place," he snarled, bringing the belt down a third time. My brother Logan sprawled on the couch, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. My mother stood with her arms crossed, nodding slightly as if my father's violence was necessary medicine. They weren't horrified. They were satisfied. In that moment, something crystallized inside me. The belt had left welts, but it hadn't broken me. Instead, it had shattered the last chain that kept me tethered to this house, to these people who saw me not as a daughter, but as an appliance with my name on it. My name is Olivia Russell. I'm 17, and I've been my family's invisible foundation. This is the story of how I dismantled everything they built on my back. "I'm not your servant," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. Without another word, I turned and walked out of the living room. No tears, no screaming, just footsteps padding softly up the stairs while 3 pairs of eyes burned into my back. For most of my life, I'd been my family's shadow. Logan never lifted a finger. If he spilled soda on the couch, I cleaned it. If he needed his uniform ironed at midnight, I stayed up. If he failed a test, I was scolded for not helping him study. I wasn't his sister. I was his staff. "You're the girl. Girls keep the house running," my mom once said, folding her arms like she'd just quoted scripture. I used to think if I worked harder, they'd see me, that maybe one day I'd be something more than a name on a chore list. But no matter what I did, Logan was always the son, and I was a means to serve him. My father ran the house like a general. No warmth, just orders. He believed discipline made strength, and obedience was respect. Whenever I questioned something, he'd look at me like I'd betrayed the family name. "You're not here to argue, Olivia," he'd say. "You're here to contribute." That word contribute became a leash. It didn't mean be part of this family. It meant shut up and work harder. Still, I did it all. I made their beds. I folded their laundry. I memorized grocery lists, ironed pleats, soaked blood out of Logan's soccer uniforms when he got into fights. He never said thank you. He just tossed more clothes on the floor. There were phrases in my house that echoed louder than footsteps. They didn't scream them. They didn't need to. They just let the words settle like dust in the lungs. "Be useful, know your place. He's a boy. You'll understand when you're older." I understood now. Not because I'd aged, but because I'd seen the pattern. It wasn't about gender. It was about control, about shaping me into something that made their lives easier, quieter. Every time I stood up for myself, they'd flip the script. "Don't be dramatic. You're just trying to start trouble." No one will ever put up with that attitude in the real world. They didn't raise me to be loved. They raised me to be palatable, to be a girl who smiled through chores, folded emotions like towels, and accepted orders like oxygen. But while they hurled commands, I started keeping score. At first, it was small. I wrote down every task I did in a notebook I hid in the lining of my backpack. Grocery lists, Logan's laundry cycles, the exact time I had to set my alarm so Dad's coffee would be ready by 6 a.m. Then I added more. Times I was blamed for Logan's mess. Times I ate leftovers while he got the hot meal. Times I was told to be quiet when I cried. It wasn't just a list. It was a record, a ledger, a system of unpaid labor and emotional taxation. And the more I wrote, the more I realized how much of my life had been stripped down to transactions. Affection was conditional. Praise was rare, but expectation, that was infinite. "You're lucky we don't charge you rent. You think anyone else would tolerate your mouth? We feed you. That's love." But it wasn't love. Love doesn't come with receipts. The day they called a family meeting, I already knew it wasn't about unity. Family meetings in our house weren't conversations. They were courtrooms, and I was always on trial. That night, I walked into the living room and saw the 3 of them already seated. Dad in his recliner, Logan sprawled across the couch like royalty, and Mom standing with her arms crossed like she'd rehearsed this. "Sit," Dad said. I didn't. I stood. "You haven't been doing your part," Mom began, tilting her head like she was disappointed in a pet, not a person. "He says his laundry hasn't been folded. His bathroom's a mess. You've been slacking." I blinked. "He's 17. He can fold his own damn shirts." Dad's hand twitched. Logan smirked. Mom's jaw tightened. "Watch your tone," she snapped. "He's a boy. He deserves better than this." I looked around the room and realized they genuinely believed that. It wasn't performance. It was doctrine. "He deserves clean clothes," she added. "He deserves peace in his home." "And I don't?" I said quietly. "I cook, I clean, I do everything, and it's never enough, is it?" "You're a girl," Dad said coldly. "You were raised to serve. That's how the world works." "No," I said. "That's how your world works. I'm not doing his laundry anymore, or his chores, or yours." That's when he stood, and when my body instinctively took a step back, I knew what was coming. "Do his laundry or get out," he roared. When I didn't move, he did. He lunged, not with warning, not with restraint. The belt wasn't even hidden this time. It was on the table, waiting like it had been invited. He grabbed it, looped it once around his fist, and swung. After the third strike, I walked out. No suitcase, no tears, no goodbye, just one last look at the 3 people who had spent my whole life telling me to be useful and who would finally understand what it meant to lose the one person who kept their house breathing. I didn't pack. I didn't take my clothes or my school books or even the tiny stack of birthday cards I'd hidden under my mattress, the ones with half-hearted messages like, "Make us proud, Olivia." I just left. A hoodie, a charger, my phone, and a notebook zipped inside my backpack. That was it. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. I didn't even look back. I wanted the silence to be the loudest thing they heard. I walked 2 miles to Jasmine's place, my best friend since 6th grade. Her porch light was still on. When she opened the door and saw my face, she didn't ask what happened. She just stepped aside and said, "Come in." That first night, I slept on a yoga mat with a bunched-up hoodie for a pillow. It was hard, cold. My ribs ached. My arm throbbed. But for the first time in my life, no one expected anything from me. No one asked for dinner. No one demanded silence or servitude. The next morning, Jasmine's mom made pancakes, real ones with syrup and laughter in the kitchen. I sat at the table like I didn't belong. "You okay staying a few days?" she asked gently. I nodded. She glanced at my arm. "More than a few?" Then they gave me a blanket, cleared out a corner of the storage room, put down a mattress, a secondhand dresser. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. In those quiet days, I waited for something. A text, a call, a threat, some recognition that I had left, that I had mattered enough to chase. But none came. My phone stayed silent. No, "Are you safe?" No, "Come back." Just silence. The same kind they always forced on me. But this time, the silence wasn't theirs. It was mine. And I was about to weaponize it. It started with a list, not for revenge, not yet, just to remember. I opened my notebook and titled the page, "Things I Did Before They Said I Wasn't Enough." I wrote fast at first, the obvious ones. Cooked 3 meals a day, cleaned Logan's bathroom, ironed school uniforms, grocery runs, packed lunches. Then came the deeper ones. Hid my own report card so Logan's wouldn't look bad. Took the blame when he broke Mom's blender. Stayed up to reheat dinner when Dad worked late, even when I had exams. Apologized for things I didn't do. It didn't stop. The list kept growing. 10 pages, then 15, then more. It wasn't just a record. It was a ledger. And every entry whispered one truth. They owed me. Not in money, in respect, in care, in acknowledgement, and they would never pay it. That's when the shift happened. I stopped asking why they hadn't called. I stopped waiting for their guilt to kick in. Instead, I began preparing. I started by filing for financial independence. With Jasmine's mom as a witness, I submitted paperwork to revoke their access to my school records, my health files, anything they might try to control later. I already had my own bank account they didn't know about. I'd been saving the small amounts I earned from babysitting the neighbors' kids for years. I got a new debit card under my name, transferred my student savings, locked my phone carrier so they couldn't suspend my line. Thankfully, my phone was already in my name since I'd bought it myself with those savings last year. Then I photographed the bruises. Not for the police, not yet, just to have. I wasn't planning a scandal. I wasn't writing an expose. I didn't want drama. I wanted clarity. I wanted the next time they looked around their home and wondered why everything felt heavier, colder, quieter. They'd remember me. Not in anger, not in guilt, in absence. Because I wasn't the daughter they lost. I was the air they forgot they were breathing, and now they'd have to learn how to suffocate without me. 3 weeks passed. Still no call. Still no text. Just a growing silence that was no longer empty. It was electric. Then one morning, while helping Jasmine's mom carry groceries to the porch, I heard the first crack. "Ran into your mom at the store," she said casually. She looked worn out, couldn't lift a gallon of milk without wincing. She asked the clerk for help bagging, said her back was out, but she looked more overwhelmed than hurt. I nodded, barely. That night, I opened my notebook again, flipped to a fresh page, titled it, "What They Lose Without Me." The next day, Jasmine's cousin Taylor, who lived 2 blocks from my old house, sent a picture. Logan outside the laundromat, his clothes stuffed in a trash bag. He looked confused and furious. A week later, Jasmine's mom mentioned what she'd heard from her coworker who worked at the same company as my father. My father had shown up late to work 3 days in a row. The coworker told her he'd started snapping at clients. Rumor was HR had written him up after he blew up in a staff meeting. And then came the message. My phone buzzed, a number I hadn't blocked because I didn't need to. Mom. Logan has an awards dinner this Friday. None of his suits are ironed. You need to stop being ridiculous and come home. No greeting, no apology, just a demand dressed as an invitation. I didn't answer. 4 days later, another text. Dad, this is childish. No one will tolerate your behavior in the real world. Come home, apologize, and we'll let you earn your place again. Let me earn it. I laughed, a dry, bitter sound. I took screenshots, not for evidence, for myself, as a reminder. This is who they are. By then, I'd enrolled in a local community college nursing program with Jasmine's mom's help. Since I was still a minor, she helped me apply for special circumstances admission, explaining my situation to the administration. I'd filed for legal emancipation, which was still in process, but allowed me to enroll with Jasmine's mom as my temporary guardian. I lived full-time in the spare room at Jasmine's, helped with dinner, took the bus, studied late. It was hard, but it was real and mine. Meanwhile, back at the Russell house, the systems I used to uphold were buckling. Neighbors began whispering. Logan started skipping school. One teacher emailed the house twice. No reply. My mom asked the church for help with meals, claiming a mobility issue, and yet they still pretended I was just away. "They're telling people you left for an internship," Jasmine said one night, "that you're pursuing maturity." Maturity. Funny how they only praised it when it suited their lie. I didn't correct anyone. I just kept building my life. Then I packed a box. Inside it, all the handwritten chore lists they used to stick to the fridge. The birthday card where Mom wrote, "We didn't plan for you, but God has a purpose." The broken locket she gave me at 13 with the words, "So you remember we didn't have to keep you." And finally, the ledger. I printed it. 52 pages, bound it, labeled the front, unpaid labor, years 10 to 17. I taped the box shut. No note, just an address label, no return. I took the bus to my old neighborhood early one morning and left the box on their doorstep at dawn. 2 days later, Taylor texted. "They didn't come out for hours. Then your dad opened the box." He looked pale. Good, because I wasn't loud. I wasn't violent. But I was exact. I'd taken everything they once demanded, my labor, my silence, my usefulness, and returned it in the form they feared most, documentation, proof. Proof they never expected me to collect. Proof of what happens when the backbone of the household walks out and doesn't come back. No headlines, no scandal, just silence sharpened into truth. 3 months later, I found myself at the coffee shop across from Logan's school. I hadn't planned the meeting, but there he was, slumped at a corner table, scrolling through his phone. I was in the area to pick up textbooks from the college bookstore nearby. He looked different, thinner, his clothes wrinkled in a way they never would have been when I lived at home. I ordered my coffee and sat down across from him without asking, his head snapped up, eyes widening. "Olivia?" His voice cracked a little. For a moment, he looked like the little kid who used to follow me around before Dad taught him I was beneath him. "Hey, Logan." I kept my voice neutral. He glanced around nervously. "Are you coming back?" "No." The silence stretched between us like a tightrope. "Dad had to hire a cleaning service," he finally said. "They quit after 2 weeks, said he was impossible." I took a sip of my coffee. Sounds like Dad. "Mom's back is getting worse. The doctor says it's stress-related." I nodded, waiting. I dot. He looked down at his hands. I had to learn how to do laundry, had to YouTube how to iron a shirt. A bitter laugh escaped him. "Failed twice. Burned a hole right through my dress shirt." I didn't respond with sympathy. I just watched him, this boy who had been taught that my purpose was to serve him. "They're saying you abandoned us," he mumbled, "that you're selfish." "And what do you say?" I asked, my voice steady. His eyes met mine, then quickly darted away. "I don't know. It's just, everything's harder now." "Yes," I said simply. "It is." "Is that why you did this? To make things harder?" I set my cup down carefully. "I didn't make anything harder, Logan. I just stopped making it easier. There's a difference." He looked at me then, really looked at me, maybe for the first time. "They won't ever admit they were wrong." I know. But they were, weren't they? It wasn't really a question. I stood up, gathering my things. "My therapist says I don't need to hear you say it, but maybe you need to hear yourself say it." I left him there, staring at his reflection in the dark screen of his phone. We haven't spoken since that day, though occasionally I'll see him around campus. He nods, I nod back, but that's the extent of our relationship now. By my 18th birthday, my emancipation was finalized. The court reviewed my documentation of abuse and granted my petition without requiring my parents to appear. My therapist, whom I'd been seeing through a community youth program, provided a supporting statement that helped seal the decision. I was legally free. I moved into a studio apartment 2 blocks from campus. It was small, 1 window, a creaky floor, a shower that ran either scalding or freezing, but every inch of it was mine. I qualified for subsidized housing for students, which made the rent manageable. I worked part-time at a local bookstore, studied at night, took nursing classes during the day, packed my own meals, folded my own laundry, 2 loads a week, quiet, peaceful. Every Friday, I lit a candle. Not for healing, not for memory, just because I could. No one barked orders, no one slammed doors, no one looked at me like I owed them something just for existing. And still, the world didn't collapse. I didn't fall apart. I didn't come crawling home. I thrived. Meanwhile, updates trickled in, not because I asked, but because the world is small and pain leaves echoes. A girl from church messaged me on social media. "Your dad had a health scare in the grocery store. They say it was stress." Jasmine's cousin saw Logan at a job fair, angry, disheveled, yelling at a volunteer because his resume got wrinkled. My mom had joined an online support group called Parents of Ungrateful Children. She posted threads titled, "When They Forget Who Fed Them." One of my former classmates who followed her saw the posts and sent me screenshots, asking if I was okay. They hadn't changed. They had just collapsed inward, angry at the vacuum I left behind but never brave enough to name it. And I no longer needed their shame to define me. I no longer needed their absence to hurt, because I had learned something they never taught me. Peace is louder than pain if you stay quiet long enough to hear it. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, 6 months after I'd left, the doorbell to my apartment rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. My address was only known to a small circle of trusted friends, including Jasmine and her family. When I opened the door, my mother stood there, looking smaller than I remembered. "Olivia?" Her voice was tight, controlled. I didn't invite her in. "Mom." "You've lost weight," she said, her eyes scanning me up and down. "I've gained perspective." She clutched her purse strap tighter. Your father wanted me to tell you that the door is open if you want to come back. On his terms, of course. His terms, I repeated. You'd need to apologize for the box, for the disruption, for leaving. I leaned against the door frame. Is that why you're here? To negotiate my return? She looked past me into my apartment, the small, tidy space I'd built for myself. We're family, Olivia. Family forgives. Family doesn't require servitude as the price of belonging. Her expression hardened. You always were dramatic. No, I said quietly. I was convenient, and now I'm not. He hurt you once, she said, her voice dropping. Once, after years of providing for you. I felt something cold slide down my spine. Once was enough, and you watched, you approved. I didn't. You did, with your silence, with your crossed arms, with he deserves better. She looked away. The house is falling apart without you. That's because it was built on my back. Rain pattered against the walkway outside. My mother stood there, halfway between leaving and staying, just as she had been my entire life. Tell Dad I got his message, I finally said, and I decline his terms. And if you're wondering how you found me, Jasmine's mom told me you followed her from the grocery store last week. Don't come back. I closed the door gently. Not a slam, just a quiet click that felt more final than any shouting match could have been. They say revenge hurts others, but mine wasn't like that. Mine was cold, controlled, clean. I never screamed at them online, never aired my story in public, never knocked on the door to say, look what you lost, because I didn't need to. Every dish I wash now is mine. Every shirt I fold is for me. Every sunrise I wake up to feels like a quiet protest they'll never hear and still can't silence. Sometimes I wonder if the house still smells like bleach and frustration, if they still print out to-do lists and tape them to an empty fridge, if Logan ever figured out that microwaves don't load themselves, if my mom ever stops flinching when someone says my name, if my dad ever looks at his belt and remembers that it wasn't obedience he used against me, it was resolve. The last time I passed the old neighborhood, I didn't slow down. I didn't glance at the porch where I once left that box. I just kept walking. Keys in my pocket, grocery list in my hand. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. They taught me to serve, so I let them collapse without me. They trained me to be silent, so I made my silence the sentence they now serve. They called me worthless, and I gave them exactly that. Nothing. Not a scream, not a plea, not a single moment of my new life. I didn't tear their house down. I just took the warmth with me. And now, when they sit in the cold silence of what used to be control, they'll finally understand what I was worth. Because true freedom isn't what they expect. Sometimes it's the echo of footsteps walking away and never coming back. As I completed my first year of nursing school with honors, I realized that I'd found something they never gave me, a future built by my own hands.